and they know that it's not a good thing, yet it's something to do, and many of them have, fictitiously convinced themselves that it's just entertainment. But then when they see the children in the neighborhood going down and down and down, they know this mentally. This is not just entertainment. This is whites paying Negroes to act like fools so that they can influence black children to act like fools. And so, it's going to be difficult seeing having to go up against these black entertainers and having to replace them with positive black entertainment. So, the elders, we've let them know it's going to be a difficult journey, but many of them agree it has to be done. It is overdue. It is way, way, way past due. And so, many of them were very excited about the whole His Name is My Name Too initiative, especially the paternal charts and the maternal charts. Many of them have a lot of the information that is needed for those charts. They save those pictures. They save those names. They save those records of people's birth. They save those records of people's death. And so they're kind of excited about being able to dust off those old books and dust off those old papers and put a chart together. So we say, thank you to them, because they are the keepers of the truth, the keepers of the lineage. And so we're going to look forward to being able to sit down with them and go through some of that old paperwork. And it's been interesting. I mean, you learn things about people that you had forgotten about, years ago. And every family has somebody in that family, whether they know that person or not, has somebody who is the keeper of the lineage. And so it's just a matter of finding out who that person is for your family. It could, like I said, it could have been a auntie or an uncle or, grandmother, great-grandmother. But it's time to start connecting with those patriarchs and matriarchs of the family and getting that information for the lineage charts. So, we had a good time. It's going to require those that want to do their charts. You're going to have to go and start talking to some of these your relatives that are in these have been locked away for years in these elderly centers and these elderly homes and whatnot, and start talking to them and getting that information. One of the best things to do is to get yourself a little, the little recorder, and get yourself a 12-pack of tapes and some batteries, and go and start spending time, talk to them. You're not going to remember all of the stuff that they tell you, so you do need that recorder. They're not going to be able to recall everything in chronological order, so the recorder will be good for helping them to put everything in its proper place. But the things that you'll learn will be amazing. And we got a lot of people that are really, really looking forward to this. Got a lot of people that are wanting to support the different campaigns, the Fix It campaign, this campaign, the initiative that we're doing, the reparations initiative. And like I said, you can always go to the website, BHC Berry, which is B as in boy, H as in Harry, C as in cat, A as in apple, B as in boy, E as in Edward, R as in Ralph, and I as in Institute. And you can just push on the donation button, and you can donate whatever amount you like. And we have different levels, so you'll get to see the sponsor levels. And if you want to sponsor one of the shows in the different series that we do, you can sponsor a series, you can sponsor a show. We do not only radio, but we also do television. You can, if you want to, you miss one of the poems, or you want to read the poem again or hear the poem again, you can either request that we read it again or do it again, or you can go to our television site, which is DYCTV. And if you put DYCTV in your search engine, you will get to the poems that you hear on the shows. You can follow us on the different social sites. We try and keep up with our people on the social sites. It's kind of hard for me, of course, because I'm sick and I spend most of my time in bed. Even the shows that I do, including this one right now, is done from bed. So, but as long as I'm here and I'm alive and I'm breathing, I will continue to at least try to get the information out to you. We have a lot of people that are leaving this realm with information, and that is a crying shame. So there's a lot of information that was passed on to us. There's a lot of information that we as historians have collected and accumulated. And there's a lot of information that we as educators have imparted on the community. And so we want to make sure that we are doing that until we are no longer able to do it. So this series has caused quite a bit of buzz. And there are some efforts, as you guys know it would be. One, because we are Panthers. Two, because we are historians and the keepers of the knowledge. And three, because we are educators and we wake up black people. There is a growing effort to, as usual, suppress the information. You saw there's been 2 shows in this series alone that have been tampered with and have, been recorded by various agencies. And, we run into all this technical difficulty all of a sudden. We try to keep on moving, but our seniors have been an enormous help to us in this particular series because they have so much information when it comes to the last name. And amazingly enough, just listening to some of the 80, 90, and 100-year-olds, and they talk about how certain people were part of the slaves that were owned by various white presidents, and they were able to point us toward articles and different things in our archives that shows different information and whatnot about it. So it's becoming quite a undertaking, which we knew it would be, but it is fascinating. There is a book that many of the seniors use to educate. We as Panther children were required to know this book backwards and forwards. So not so much backwards, but definitely forward. But it has many of the articles. This one is a collection of one of the historians, and his name is Mr. Wilson. He has the Wilson's Group. And the Wilson Group decided to, Ben Wilson Jr. decided to put together a series of articles, a collection of articles that were done by a black paper in the 1700s and 1800s and all the way up to the mid-1900s. But Mr. Wilson and the Wilson Group put together a collection of the articles that were done by the Black Chronicle. And just those of you who are starting your lineage chart for the first time, you'll want to make sure you get a copy of this, of the Black Chronicles. You can just put in Black Chronicles, CHRONICLE, Black Chronicle, and it should bring you up in your search engine, Mr. Wilson and the Wilson Group. And when you go through this, it's a rather large book. It's the size of the newspaper at the time, so it's pretty large, and it's about $20. Last time I checked, I don't know if it's went up, but it's definitely worth it, because my elders have a lot of information about the days that, you have. I met back, I guess, 15 years ago. I met some elders that were having a discussion about the day that Marcus Garvey was deported. And they were talking about the different newspapers that, reported on the situation at the time, and how the black newspapers were able to get in there and really get the in-depth, real deal about what was going on, and even interview Garvey himself. And so that kind of information is worth its weight in gold. But one of the issues that caught my attention, and I'm going to give you a little piece here, is Washington's Slave. This is from January 1st, 1794. This was in the Black Chronicle on January. This was published on January the 1st, 1974. And something interesting about it is that it gives a partial result up at the top. They had just gotten the information back for the 1790s, the census of 1790. And of course, unlike today, it took a lot of handwork, hands-on work, not so much computer work, to tally all of that information. So it could take 2 and 3, 4 years to compile all of the information from the census. It could take a year or more to collect all of the information from the census. But it has the results of the 1790s census, and it shows free men of color in Boston totaled 781. Free men in New York totaled 1,078. Free men in Philadelphia totaled 1,420. And free men of color in Baltimore totaled 323. And then it showed slaves in Boston, none. As you know, Boston had, in 1790, after having slaves or participating in the slave trade from 1492 until 1750 and 60, Quakers decided that they were being looked at badly around the world in non-slave trade countries, white countries that had been developed, and they were trying to do certain things as far as minerals and whatnot, and they were trying to show themselves as not being the same barbarians. And remember, this is leading up to in 1994. This is leading up to the Civil War. You have hostility that has been simmering since the whole war with Britain, and it's still there. But you have the Northern, which is the British parents and grandparents that do things the English way and are trying to make it seem like their children in America in the South are barbaric and doing things the uncivilized way in regards to controlling the Negro population. So if you think about this, this is basically leading up to the political turmoil that is going to be occurring in the 1800s, particularly 1820 to 1850, between Southern British American whites and their Northern British American parents and grandparents. So, in Boston it says that there are no slaves, which is not necessarily true. It just means that there are no people, no whites, that admitted on the census that they own slaves. Now you have, at that same time, you have thousands and thousands of indentured servants. Those are people who got to the North, and whites fronted their food, clothing, shelter, whatever. And so they owe these whites free labor for taking them in or putting them up or whatever. So they're indentured servants. Indentured servants are not counted as slaves in the census. So that was one of the things that our elders were able to break down for us, and which was very interesting. So even though Boston says it has no slaves, at the time it had thousands and thousands of indentured servants, Negroes that were giving their free labor to whites for whatever they were told they owed whites. In New York City, you have 2,184 slaves, and that's just the ones that admitted that they had slaves, because remember, this is at a time where slavery itself is supposedly the slave trade of actually bringing ships into New York Harbor for the purpose of slave auctioning and slave trading is considered to be being abolished. It is still happening, but this number here is probably actually 10, 20, 100 times more than what the census is getting, because if something is frowned upon, or if something is going out of style, or if slavery is being looked upon as a bad thing, you would not have whites answering the census properly or correctly as to how many slaves they really own. So according to the official number, the official count, there is 2,184 slaves in New York City in 1790. So when you're doing your paternal and maternal lineage charts, if your family is from the North in the New York area, you'll want to look at the census information for New York in 1790 and look for those last names of your family members and track who owned those family members as slaves. In Philadelphia, they are saying there's only 210 slaves in Philadelphia. We know because the Black Chronicle was published in Philadelphia. We know that that number is ridiculously low. That number is absolutely incorrect, and that there were thousands and thousands of slaves in Philadelphia at that time. And then it shows Baltimore as having 1,255 slaves in their city. Now, when it comes to whites, we're going to kind of give you an idea of how elders were able to teach us and to show us that whites were not telling the truth with the census, which is why a lot of black people do not trust the white American census today. But it shows in most places slave labor, Negroes, outnumbered white folks. And so when people talk about the low, that there's only 15% Negroes, well, that's because whites counted other foreign nationality whites. So if you're going to count British American whites, then Negroes would outnumber that number. But because British American whites were inviting other whites from other places, French American, French people to become American, German people to become American, Italian people to become American, Jewish people to become American, and these people were listed as white. It made the number of whites appear to be, 4 and 5 times more than that of the Negro slave population or the Negro population. So it shows the total number of whites in Boston in 1790 as being 17,277. So, of course, like I say, that would include, for example, you have the original black natives of this northern country, and they were not included in that count of black people. So, you have a separation of black and a lowering of the number of the Negroes for the census purpose. And that's for whites to feel that they outnumber, that they are superior that in number over black, because whites had a lot of fear about the Negro population overtaking the white population. So the census was used and published to alleviate that fear, to show that, no, we're still, 6 and 7 times more than them, which was absolutely not correct. And one of the things that the elders were using to illustrate this when we were younger is that, and they still do, by the time the average white woman of the time had her first child at 25 or close to 30, by the time she had her first white child, the average black child, the average black woman, the Negro woman or the slave woman, had 4 children. So if you think about for every one Caucasian child, and there's 4 Negro children being born. Now, whites had certain mechanisms in place to control the 4 children that this Negro woman had. One of the children would more than likely be killed before it reached the age of 21. One of the children would be sold to a prison institution or some kind of labor camp before it reached the age of 21. or close to the age of 21. And so she would have one child that would be, of a nature where she's trying to hang on to the two, and the youngest is the only one she's going to be able to hang on to. The other one would be sold away from her, and she would not know where he was sold to. So she technically has two children left, but one of them has been sold, and she does not know where it is. So she's left with one child, which for the census purpose would make her even with the white woman who only had one Caucasian child. So there was different manipulating mechanisms that whites had in order to fudge the numbers to make it appear to whites that black numbers were lower. But before we run out of time, I'm going to just give you this for those of you that do not understand the power of information that elders hold. I want you to get this Black Chronicle. It's $20, and you can get it from the Wilson Group. But this is the Black Chronicle for January 1st, 1794. And it says, Washington slave eludes capture. February 19, I got to get these numbers right. February 1793. See, that's how it's historians. We in all different kinds of decades because we read so much information. But this is February 1793. Okay? This is 70 years before the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. A female slave of President Washington's has escaped to New Hampshire, and it does not seem likely that she will be returned to her illustrious owner. The president, it seems, sent a messenger to New Hampshire's Governor Gilman requesting her capture, but the governor neglected a fair opportunity to arrest her and even put her out of reach of her pursuers. This account was taken from the lips of the slave woman herself, who is now living in New Hampshire. Other sources reveal that His Excellency sent a letter to Mr. Whipple, the collector of Portsmouth, describing the fugitive as particularly expressing the desire of her mistress, Mrs. Washington, for her return. Fearing a public outcry, however, he cautioned the collector, I do not mean, however, by this request that such violent measures should be used as would excite a mob or riot, which might be the case if she has adherent or even uneasy sensations in the minds of well-disposed citizens, rather than either of these should, let's see, it continues on number 3. We only got a minute left. Number 3. Where is that? Fugitive slave. Can't find it. Okay, President Washington. Okay. Happen. I would forego her services altogether. Okay? And the example also, which is of infinite more importance, in his reply, Mr. Whipple recognized the President's request. I will now, sir, agreeably to your desire, send her to Alexandria, Virginia, if it be acceptable, without the consequences which you expect, that of exciting a riot or mob, or creating uneasy sensations in the minds of well-disposed persons. Okay, so we'll talk about more tomorrow. We're out of time. But you'll see exactly how much information is contained in elderly senior citizens' minds and in the different articles that they point us to. Until then, All power to the people. Thanks for joining us.